What can I say? It has been a big week. A new leader has been selected for our nation. His name is Abraham. Yes. I didn't expect applause for that, but it's true. This week we are in Parshat Lech Lecha, and when God selects Abraham to be in a covenantal relationship, he says, Lech Lecha, go forth. I will make of you a great nation. I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. What the Torah doesn't tell us is why Abraham was chosen by God. In fact, before his selection, there is nothing that hints at why he should be our leader. Abraham is not, like Noah, called righteous in his generation. He is already quite old, 75, to lead. Indeed, this is just Torah, folks. I'm just telling you the Torah. Indeed, one of the few detailed stories in this portion paints a disturbing picture of Abraham's self-centered behavior when he lies to Pharaoh about Sarah being his sister instead of his wife in order to protect and enrich himself. Not exactly the moral character you want to see in your leader. Nevertheless, God chose Abraham. And Abraham and Sarah do find a home in Canaan. Abraham becomes preoccupied with building up his life. He prospers, he gains status, but he then begins to despair. Because despite Abraham and Sarah's many blessings, a key component of their covenantal promise remains unfulfilled. Abraham, the leader of our faith, turns to God and has his first crisis of faith, saying, O Lord God, all that you've given me is great, but I'm still childless. Abraham loses hope in the promise of a great nation. Now, God doesn't comfort or say, don't worry, or have faith. Instead, God instructs Abraham to act. Go outside. Now look toward heaven and count the stars. So shall your seed be. And Abraham does just that. He steps outside of himself. He looks up to the heavens. He counts the vast expanse of stars and feels awe. The Torah says, Ve'emin ba'Adonai, and Abraham trusted in God. The first time that word emunah is ever seen in the Torah. Now, emunah is frequently translated as faith, and you might think of faith and trust as interchangeable, but there's an important difference. Faith is a noun, something that you can have or possess, as in, I have faith. But trust here is a verb, as in, Abraham trusted in God. Trust is something you do. It's an action. So when Abraham steps outside himself and looks above, he finally transcends his own personal desires. He understands that he is serving something bigger than himself. God then asks Abraham to make sacrifices, saying, bring me a heifer, a goat, a ram, a turtle dove, and a bird. Abraham was clearly prosperous. And the portion ends with God asking Abraham to affirm the covenant with circumcision at age 99. Now that's a sacrifice. So, only when Abraham trusts in the divine and transcends self-centeredness and sacrifices on behalf of something greater than himself, only then does Abraham become the leader we all know and admire. The leader who goes out of his way to welcome the stranger. The leader who fights for justice in Sodom and Gomorrah and establishes our nation in the promised land. I pray that our president-elect can also trust in the promise of this country and transcend divisions and sacrifice on behalf of the greater good. We've just come through a polarizing, difficult election. Approximately half of our country, including people in these pews and out there, are celebrating or at least believing that Tuesday was the right outcome. And the other half of our country, including many here and there, are feeling dispirited, alienated, having a crisis of faith. No matter which way you voted, I think all of us feel uncertainty in our future and share concerns for how such a divided country can heal and move forward, more united, so that all of us can live with dignity and prosperity. Without doing so, we can never be a great nation. And I'm not here to tell you, don't worry or have faith, but rather to convey the wisdom of this week's Torah portion, which says, you want to be a great nation, you must trust in it. You must work for it. I think our country's leaders were onto something when they put on all of our currency, in God we trust. That's not an act of blind or passive faith that this country would live up to our highest ideals and aspirations. It's a call to make sure that it does. So how could each of us have our own Abraham moment of stepping maybe outside our bubble, transcending ourselves and feeling not just awe, but that we are responsible for one another? Can we lead like Abraham, who went out of his way to welcome the stranger, both the stranger from a different land and maybe the stranger with a differing view? Can we sacrifice like Abraham on behalf of our shared humanity and look beyond our contempt to become curious? Can we connect instead of withdraw? This Shabbat falls between Election Day and Veterans Day. Throughout America's history, thousands in the armed services have trusted in our country by safeguarding its values of freedom and liberty with their very lives. Every one of us will be called upon to transcend and sacrifice. And lest you think that you're off the hook, I want to share a teaching from Orthodox Rabbi Dov Linzer in dialogue with Abby Prograbin in It Takes Two to Torah, their wonderful book. And he asks, why, of all people in humanity, did God choose Abraham? The Sfat Emet, a 19th century Hasidic commentator, says, actually, God didn't choose him in particular. God said, Lech Lecha, to all of humanity. But Abraham was the only one who was listening. Lech Lecha. God is calling to each and every one of you. You want a great nation? Follow the call. When God says, and you shall be a blessing, don't hear that as a prophecy. That is a charge. Be a blessing. Lech Lecha. Go forth. Be a blessing. And together we will make our nation great.